This episode of Fragments of Silicon is brought to you by rain and more rain.
Did somebody start up a wind tunnel?
I just assumed that was the theme music playing because that's what it sometimes sounds like now.
I know. Like, I'm being facetious. Anyway, welcome to another episode of Fragments of Silicon. I'm your host, Adam. Joining me, as always, is the regular crew. Let's get to the news. Twilight, why don't you start us off this week?
There really hasn't been much going on this week. My mother's birthday is coming up pretty soon, so I'm getting prepared for that. And I've been playing some Atelier Verona since I don't really have any games to play for this week, and that's about it.
Well, short and sweet, I guess. Alex, what's going on with you?
Continuing to hold down the fort. Unfortunately, the other day the freezer got left open while I wasn't away. I don't remember doing that, and that was the day that we had someone here doing cleaning, so that's either why I was distracted or why it happened. I don't know, so we're probably going to have to get rid of a bunch of stuff in that freezer, but I don't think there was anything super important in there, so that's probably not too bad. It's raining like crap here today, so hopefully maybe some of the evening humidity will be less for the next couple days. That would be nice. Because it's been low humidity during the day, like 50% maybe. Apparently the humidity in Maine is pretty high, but like every night it's been like 90% humidity, so I haven't been able to leave my windows open because when I do that, my floor ends up damp sometimes.
That's going to happen with 90% humidity.
Anyway, I'm taking the next couple days off from work because we have a long weekend anyway because of, Labor Day?
Labor Day, yes.
Not too much specific plans. In perhaps an unusual case, tabletop gaming news, I got the core rule book for the second edition of Pathfinder and have been flipping through that. I like some of the changes they made, but some of them are very frustrating to me because a lot of them are increased ease of play with in exchange for lack of granularity or cohesiveness in the rules, and I really like granularity in my rules so that I can understand why stuff is the way it is. No plans for our role-playing group to switch over anytime soon, especially since most of us use non-core characters, so it'll be a while before the stuff that we use is actually converted. But, yeah, not much else going on. Oh, yeah, in regular video gaming, I started up Sagebrush, which we're reviewing this weekend, but, haven't gotten too far in it. It's a 3D adventure game, or first-person adventure game type thing, which takes a while, so I'm going to have to dedicate some time to that. In terms of games for the Switch, we have now entered the part of the year where there are entirely too many of them, and I'm having to decide which ones I want to, get and which ones I want to save for later, because I can't afford to get all of them, or even that many, since I still have dental stuff coming up. And, and they keep announcing more of them, like that the Mega Man and Zero and ZX Legacy Collection. I'm probably going to have to pick up just to.
That's in January.
Yeah, that's in January.
I know, but it's still but
it's like what else are you going to pick up in January?
True. It's just they keep. I guess it's more the psychological thing that they just keep announcing things.
I guess.
Which I guess is better than them not announcing things.
Anyway.
But yeah, I actually haven't been playing that much lately because I've been busy with stuff. But yeah, that's all I got.
All right. Anything? You're up.
Well, I started physical therapy on Monday, so that was a thing.
How did it go?
I think I might have overdid it Monday and Tuesday because I've been having a hard time walking, so I've just been kind of taking it easy today.
Like, understandable though, given that you've just started it.
Mm-hmm.
How long?
Yeah.
How long are you supposed to be doing the rehab here?
Right now they currently have therapy stuff planned out till the end of September. And then we'll go from there if I need more.
Okay. Like, and when do they think you can be able to tackle stairs?
They won't let me tackle stairs until I can at least bend my knee 90 degrees, and right now I'm just like under 80.
So you need an extra 10 degrees.
Yeah.
So, what, in a month? 3 months here?
I have no idea.
Okay. All right.
Hopefully it's soon.
Yeah. Yes. I mean...
If you use a saw, you could make it so it can bend any number of degrees.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, it's like... Anyway, anything else going on?
As far as gaming stuff goes, still been playing Final Fantasy XIV. I've actually been started leveling Black Mage, because it was like the lowest level job I had, and figured why not.
Is that just pretty much generic Final Fantasy Black Mage? You get your 3 elements and you cast the spells, what with the moves?
Yep.
Do they get status effect stuff, or just...
They used to, but they stripped a lot of that out because it wasn't really useful. I think
totally useful. No, I'm kidding.
I think they still have sleep, though. That's about the only thing they have.
I mean, Final Fantasy is not one of the games where status... It's not usually one of the games where the ability to inflict status effects on enemies is effective.
Mm-hmm. And then, yeah, just kind of been living. Hopefully I can go back upstairs soon. And that's about it from me.
Right. My turn? Well, I guess before I get to me, Mac has emerged from the haze of wherever to give us a status update. Sort of. That is to say, he's gotten his, what he calls his podcast machine, up in order. So that's a step closer to, doing broadcast stuff again. He's looking to relaunch MSP on Tuesday nights. As far as any of us are going to be a part of that, honestly, we haven't talked about it. Like, he wanted me to do a co-host, but he's just not talked to me about it. So, as of this broadcast, no, I'm not a part of that, nor is anyone else here. On the inverse, whether or not Mac is returning to Fragments of Silicon, once again, that's still up in the air. He doesn't know. He's still trying to figure out between the Uber and doing 3 shows, because 3 days in a row, because Mac is planning on doing streaming stuff on his own channel on Mondays. MSP Redux is supposed to be on Tuesdays, and this show broadcasts on Monday. Our main episode is on Wednesdays. He's not planning to be part of any of the European interviews or Sunday reviews at this point. Point of order.
But Adam, I'm sure he has so much to add to a discussion about some French game studio that's making a first-person adventure puzzle game that involves, I'll bring it back, pinball.
You never know. him.
True.
I'm like, the point is that he's getting closer to returning to the stuff we do, but not quite close enough to where it can be guaranteed. So, and once again, he hasn't really talked to any of us about this. He's just left some messages in our Discord about it. So, whether or not he returns, that is all still up in the air. He could, also worth noting, burnout is a factor here because he's planning on doing 3 shows plus, the MSP stuff, plus the Moonhawk Studio stuff, plus, the actual work stuff. Like, it's happened before, where he rejoins the show and drops out a couple months later. I know that, like, last time was because of financial issues, but point is, we are operating under the assumption that Mac is not joining us until he tells us he is ready to join us. That is, I suppose, our official statement on the matter there, currently. Personal news, well... Whoa. In personal news, it's nearing September, so hurricanes are afoot. So, being kind of busy today, not just watching, but making just-in-case plans. Hopefully they won't have to be used, but, just kind of gearing up here in case we have to deal, not so much with Dorian coming in, but more boomeranging around or not losing power going across the states. Not really worried about it too much in the here and now. Maybe an update in the next couple of days, like the Friday show or even the Sunday show. Anyway. And yeah, that's about it for me this week. So, merrily we shall roll along to the interview portion of the broadcast. And joining us this week is Rodrigo Cuadriello Garza of Seashell Studio.
Hi.
Hi. So how are you doing tonight?
I'm really good, Adam. How are you doing?
I'm doing fine. I think everyone here is doing fine. Right, so how we like to get started is we like to ask the people behind the games, studios, and whatnot, what got them interested in video games, both on a personal and a professional level?
Sure. In personal level, video games have been around all my life. Mm-hmm. And for instance, animation and video games are both really interesting parts of art and culture. And when growing up, I grew up with lots of TV shows, video games that really stood there for me at that time. So keeping that in mind, a lot of that influence is still in the development of our work in Seashell Studio. Mm. So in terms, for example, in the studio itself, there are a lot of influences in retro games, for example, Nintendo 64 games, some of them visually, some of them functionally.
All right. And on a professional level, how did you decide that you wanted to actually make video games for a living?
Sure. That was kind of a curious thing because I have no college degree in anything related to video games. So it was more like getting curious about learning how to make video games. And for example, there's a lot of contests that I've been applying to. For instance, some of them from animation. Some animation contests I've been applying to were very well in result-wise, because some of them got me awards nationally and internationally, and it starts growing in making a living out of this kind of stuff, the entertainment part, games, animation, all that stuff. So yeah, I started learning Unity by myself and start gathering people that are really passionate about what they do. Some of them are illustrators, some of them are more programming people, and we have as well our music composer. Um, and yeah, we all have that focus about making cool things, passionate about what we do.
Makes sense. I mean, just from what I've seen on your website, this is definitely a very artist-focused studio.
Mhm.
Especially since you've got both, like the video games here, but also the animation side.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. As I've already told you, I don't have a formal education in programming or in video games as in that matter, but
Right.
some of my colleagues at Seashell Studio have the same thing. We all have a degree in graphical design. So in that matter, we have a very focus-driven graphical design and artists in illustration and 3D modeling. So yeah,
Right. And has that been a hard transition, to move like from graphic design to other areas where your expertise might not be as sharp?
yeah. At the beginning, well, we met at the college, but they don't they are not in the same. They were not in the same generation as me. So they were a different generation, and we met at a degree, diploma of animation. So that's where we met and started working together. And after that, the transition between animation of that degree that we had started kind of slow, then growing into it, and with some of the tutorials that are around in the web right now, and some people that we know from the industry itself, they really got us into improving our skills.
That's good to hear. And how long have you been making games?
Making games, well, Launchapalooza, the game that we have been developing for the last 19 months,
Mhm.
has been our first published game. We have some other games that have not been published. They were more like exercises at the time. So Running Fable, the first game with the Seashell Studio name on it,
Mhm.
is there on our website, and that game was meant to be for a contest.
Ah,
So we made that game in about two and a half months, and we entered the contest. We got all tons of experience from that contest and some networking. And well, after that, we start making some other games that were again exercises at the time. A Hey Arnold video game that was, well, I'm a huge Hey Arnold fan, so I wanted to make a game that was like a game that's never been done before, because there is just one game about the animated cartoon Hey Arnold, and it's quite a very well, a very old game. It was for Game Boy Advance, and it's a very simple game. So I started making a game about the movie that was on that time going to be released.
hmm.
And yeah, it was a fun game at the time, but after that, there was a lot of experience gained in that project that lately transitioned into making Launchapalooza, uh, making it more focused on having good programming, scenario, good graphics, and all that stuff.
Right. And gotta admit, Hey Arnold was out of my time when it came to Nickelodeon. I certainly was aware of it, but not something I like actively watched. But uh, I'm guessing that was the Game Boy Advance game was published by THQ and was a bad platformer.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I've played it, and it's very simple. Actually, it was like just to promote the movie the neighborhood movie that was in that time, and later with the jungle movie that was actually in the channel like a couple of years ago. I wanted to like make a game based on it and like try to
Uh-huh.
uh, make a game about a thing that I love.
Makes sense. Once again, it's like don't have much experience with Hey Arnold, but I definitely experienced like the platformers of say Ren and Stimpy and Rocko's Modern Life, and this
Oh
like
yeah.
I'm like, ooh, those were not good. No.
Yeah.
So did you ever end up actually distributing your fan game in any?
Well, I've tried to. I had a small demo about the boarding house of Hey Arnold. It was like a 3D platformer, and we contacted Nickelodeon, Craig Bartlett, the creator of Hey Arnold, and some other people at Viacom. We got some response, but at the end, it was not that well received because at the time we haven't shipped any game, and as well as the movie itself, I think it didn't meet the expectations of the studio. So it was not that didn't want to like keep on making stuff about something that probably was one thing that just some people wanted.
Hmm, that's unfortunate.
Yeah. But it gave us ton of experience, and some of it transitioned into the next game, Lunchapalooza.
Fair enough, and Lunch Blues is your own thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Though I gotta admit, I gotta ask how the Hey Arnold thing kind of correlates to Lunchapalooza. But before we get into that, for the uninitiated, what is Lunchapalooza?
Okay. Well, Lunchapalooza is a multiplayer party game. We try to make it different to other party games that are out there. Basically, you can choose between different kinds of food. Uh, we have the burger, the meatball, the corn, jelly, pizza, sushi, all that types of food, and each of them battle against each other in different levels. So you can choose between an Italian restaurant, a arcade table, a like a lake based on Mexico, the Mexican culture, as well as some other levels that are in the game right now.
I see. And like, what kind of combat are we talking about? Like knocking food off the table? Just kind of blowing them up.
Yeah, it's based upon trying to knock other players out, but there are some things trying to keep the balance off. So, for instance, some enemies, there are hazards on each level. Each level has different type of enemies that are appropriate to that level itself. So, for instance, in the Italian level, there is a spoon, a fork, and a knife that come around at random times. They attack the players as well, so it makes each match unique because once a player can get to defeat the other player, maybe at random times a hazard can attack the player that was at the lead, so it makes things a little bit more random and party game wise.
I see. And like, now, do all the various food bits have like unique characteristics, unique powers?
Yeah, of course. Each of them have different attacks, and those attacks come in hand with the unique type of food related stuff. For example, the corn had some kernels, some grains that are their main attack. It's like kind of a Crash Bandicoot type of attack that you can
like the whirlwind.
yeah, spin around and lose your kernels or grains to attack other players. There's also the burger that is kind of a tank. So the burger can stomp and send all the players out, but it's kind of a slow type of player. And yeah, there's tons of different movesets, as well as some power ups or traps. So the power ups and traps are food related as well. Everything we tried making food related or like comic mischief for that instance, because uh, for example, there is a black pepper power up that you can sneeze and have a double jump. There is a gum power up that you can attach two players together, and yeah, different power ups as well.
Makes sense. Um, so, how far along is the game? I know it recently launched into early access a few months ago, but
Yeah.
you know, like what is the state of play here?
Right now, the game has 8 characters, 5 levels, 3 game modes, and up to I think 32 skins. So it's for the moment uh, an early access, as you already said, and we are looking to get some feedback from the people because um, the early access thing was to get all the information we can in the moment we are developing right now. So when the full release comes to Steam, we can have all the feedback from people and improve the game upon that.
So, if I'm understanding this correctly, early access is more about polish and feedback than like more content.
Yeah, exactly. More content because the game itself is well, everything that we plan to make into the game is on the early access right now. It's just based upon improving in terms of more levels, for example, more characters, and what people have been asking a lot is about turning into an online multiplayer game because for the moment as it is a local multiplayer as well as solo play because you can battle against three other comps.
Yeah, I could definitely understand that because you know the that's a platform thing. Like getting 4 people around a computer is a bit more of a tall order than say a console. Like
Yeah,
we have covered previous games that are very multiplayer focused and only have the local thing, and it's always a bit of a issue when it comes to when people are playing on Steam. But I suppose the whole question around that is online multiplayer an actual viable thing you could do, or is this going to be restricted to local only because of technical difficulties, let's say?
well, we haven't confirmed online multiplayer just yet, but certainly if there's a big portion of the market that really wants to have online multiplayer, we can try to get around get around working into online as well. Because in terms of technically achieving it, we
Mhm.
have made some research and we have made some testing, and it's viable. But we just want to make sure that the community is out there. So when the online gets there, there is people that want to battle against other online players as well.
Right. And so, how long are you planning on having the early access period be?
We're planning on having it for about 5 to 6 months. So by the first quarter of 2020, we will release the full version on Steam.
Okay, um, that's good to hear. Um, and returning to a question I mentioned earlier, how did the Hey Arnold game flow into Lunchapalooza here? Because, well, it's kind of, I'm assuming that's like programming experience or something, because, just like aesthetically and in terms of genre, we're in very different worlds here.
Yeah, exactly. Well, yeah, it didn't transition exactly. We used some of the programming like term programming logic that was into Hey Arnold. For example, some of the movement, rotating characters, having a cooldown in the attacks. What else? I think some of the camera as well, but I'm not really sure. I think it was more to do with the movement of the character, as well as some of the power-up systems and that stuff.
So, okay, a bit more than I was expecting, but
yeah, it was like probably 2% of the actual programming content that was on the game of Hey Arnold transitioned to Lunchapalooza.
Mm-hmm. And let me see here. In terms of builds, is this game Windows only, or are you planning on having like Mac and Linux versions as well? When this game gets fully released.
Oh, well, actually, the Steam release that we made on Early Access has a Mac built into it, so you can download right now PC and Mac versions. In terms of Linux, it was kind of a funny story because we haven't planned into building into Linux as for right now, but there was a contact that sent us an email about I think a month ago, no, 2 months ago, more or less, and he told us that he was into Linux gaming and he had like a Linux consortium game. So he contacted us and asked if the game was going to be on Linux. We told him that for the moment we haven't decided because as well as far as we know, there's not such a big market in Linux users for Steam. But if we got more people coming into asking for Linux builds, we could certainly try to work into that as well.
It's also generally the hardest thing to make compatibility work for, since Linux has a lot of variety, since it requires a lot of customization.
Yeah, probably as well. Yeah, we haven't really tried a Linux build, as well as we've got some Linux machines on the studio, but they are more for render. For example, in our animations, we use Blender. Blender is a great software that works really good with Linux in rendering.
Right. And let me see here. In terms of pricing, the game is currently $13. Is that a thing that's going to stay at that price when it gets released, or is that going to go up when it gets to the full version?
We have planned raising the price a little bit more when there is more content in the final version, as well as in terms of what we already discussed about online. If the game is with online multiplayer at launch, we could work with the price more or less between $15. So yeah, $15 to $19 more or less.
Yeah, it's about standard. Like,
yeah.
Let me see here. Any thoughts towards the consoles at this point, or are you just kind of focused on getting the PC version finished at this point?
Well, that's something we've been discussing with the team, and we will certainly love to have the game on every console. But as for right now, we can't discuss anything publicly in that term. But yeah, that's something we will certainly love to have.
Duly noted. Right, now I'll turn it over to my colleagues here to see if they have any questions about Lunchapalooza.
I think all mine have been answered.
I think mine have been answered as well.
Yeah, I'm good. Looking forward to seeing what you come up with, though.
All right, then. All right, so I think that'll about do it, at least in the here and now. The game is Lunchapalooza. It's available on Steam Early Access, currently retailing at $12.99 for Windows and Mac.
Yep.
And be sure to pick it up in this period before the price raises. Rodrigo, I'd like to thank you for taking time out of your schedule and being with us here this week.
Thanks to you.
No problem. All right, Twilight, play us to the next segment. All right, welcome to the topic of discussion for the week. So we were originally going to talk about Age of Empires, last week, but then the show ran long. And this week, I actually want to suspend that till next week because I want to talk about a more broad Microsoft topic. And yet, also very niche as well. That is to say, I want to talk about Microsoft games on Nintendo platforms, specifically Nintendo handhelds. And yes, in case you missed the news, Ori and the Blind Forest has been announced for the Nintendo Switch. It comes out next month. And unlike some other Switch announcements here, this is being published by Microsoft directly.
That's another thing to my list of things that I need to, pick up at some point.
Right. And that's kind of the big differentiator between the now and the here, as it were. That is to say, like, Microsoft has a long, surprisingly long history on Nintendo platforms, going all the way back to about 1999 or so. We're talking pre-Xbox. So, the first game that appeared on a Nintendo platform that was licensed by Microsoft, and that's kind of the key word here. Today, Microsoft is actually publishing their games on Nintendo platforms and other platforms, but back even till about a few years ago, it was all licensed out to other parties. Once again, like the first Microsoft game to appear on the Game Boy Color, first Nintendo platform, was the Microsoft Entertainment Pack, published by Conspiracy Entertainment. And
sadly, not featuring Chip's Challenge.
Right. Well, that's because the Microsoft Entertainment Pack was based off of the best of.
Uh-huh.
I don't think Chip's Challenge appeared in that. I could be wrong, though. Like, once again, there were like 5 of these. But yeah, it's like that's kind of how it all started out. In pre-Xbox, you also had things like a game called Monster Truck Madness 64. Monster Truck Madness is an early Microsoft racing game. But once again, that was published by, of all companies, Rockstar.
Looks like the GBC version had Tuts Tombs, Tri-Peaks, Free Cell, Tic Tactics, Minesweeper, Life Genesis, and Ski Free.
Right. It's not surprising that Chip's Challenge isn't there because that's actually something they licensed.
Uh-huh. Chip's Challenge was actually in the Best of Microsoft Entertainment Pack, but...
Yeah, there we go. Like I said, it gets a bit fuzzy because there's a lot of these.
Right, yeah.
But yeah, it's
it was like every Windows version had a slightly different...
Yeah. I mean, there were like 4 or 5 of them, and then you have the Best of pack.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
anyway, sorry.
Yeah, anyway. Another example is Konami had license to bring certain Microsoft games to like the PlayStation 2. Only thing that materialized there was Age of Empires 2, and only like a PAL release. But those are few and far between. As far as Microsoft and Nintendo handhelds, that kept going into the Xbox era. And not just the rinky-dink franchises either, but major stuff like Age of Empires showing up on the DS, for example. Age of Empires 2 and Age of Mythologies. Let's see, Zoo Tycoon also made an appearance there on the DS. And this, a Game Boy Advance. You've also got like Rare. Rare, even though they got bought out by Microsoft, they still made Game Boy Advance games, for example.
Because there was no competition in the.
Well, yeah, it's like
they weren't competing, rather, in the.
It's like that's basically how it came about. Like the reason why we kept getting these Microsoft games, either directly or indirectly. It gets further weird because Rare was a Microsoft. Was a Microsoft developer 2002 onwards, but their games were not published by Microsoft either. Like Banjo-Kazooie, Grunty's Revenge was handled by THQ. Really, I think THQ handled all their GBA, and not their all of their. Well, it's like all of the things that could be independently published, because this relationship gets more and more complicated when you look at it, because we also have Rare and Nintendo working together, even though Rare is still owned by Microsoft here, because the Donkey Kong Country trilogy was brought to the GBA and was done by Rare. And ditto Diddy Kong Racing DS. And indeed, that kind of, with Diddy Kong Racing DS, there was actually a bit of a conflict there, because Banjo and Conker had to drop out because those are Microsoft-owned characters at this point.
Mm-hmm.
So they added, a couple of characters from Donkey Kong 64, if I'm remembering correctly. I never played Diddy Kong Racing DS, because, honestly, the reviews were fairly middling. But yeah, Rare's situation was pretty unique there. Like with it's especially interesting with the DS, because the GBA stuff was all stuff that they were working on pre-buyout, and they just continued working on that because why not? Basically, Microsoft doesn't really have a handheld. Like the closest thing that they had in that era was like the Pocket PC, which was kind of their version of the Palm Pilots. Anyone remembers these things? I'm like 2000.
They weren't exactly optimal for gaming.
Yeah, 2003 was longer ago than you realize. Like, they also had some mobile agreements. And so on and so forth. Like, as far as the actual how the games fared, well, that kind of depended on who was handling them. Because once again, I don't know how much input Microsoft really had on all of the stuff that they licensed out. For example, Microsoft, as the license holder, probably had things laid out for, say, Zoo Tycoon DS, but mainly THQ calling the shots here because they were the publisher, and I do know for the Rare stuff, some things came down, not just with Diddy Kong Racing DS, but for the Banjo pilot game. That was originally supposed to be a Diddy Kong racing game for the GBA. When the split happened, they couldn't use the Diddy Kong racing stuff because that wasn't being published by Nintendo, and they just inserted Banjo into it. And as far as Rare's offerings on the GBA, they were mixed. I mean, has anyone else here played Banjo-Kazooie Grunty's Revenge? I feel like I'm the only person on the face of the planet that has actually done so.
I barely played Banjo-Kazooie.
I've only played the two that were on the N64. I knew Grunty's Revenge existed, but I never touched it.
Yeah, I've never played any Banjo-Kazooie games.
I'm like, that's not a surprise. That's not a surprise. It's like, even if you played the Banjo-Kazooie games, you probably only played the console versions. Like, THQ wasn't the marketing powerhouse that Nintendo was when it came to Rare's properties.
Well, Adam, I think Banjo is one of my most influenced games right now. In terms of like Banjo-Tooie, I think is probably my most beloved game of all times.
Yeah.
If I'm being honest.
Well, I mean, did you ever play the GBA game, though?
Yeah, I played the GBA. It was not as good, in my opinion, as the Banjo-Kazooie or Tooie, but
Yeah,
it's
that's basically where I was with the Banjo-Kazooie GBA game. Like, it was okay, but translating a 3D platformer to 2D was maybe not as excruciating as the other way around, but there was definitely something lost in translation.
Yeah.
It's like, I guess it didn't help that what Grunty's Revenge is it's what they call a midquel. Like, it's a game that takes place in between Banjo-Kazooie and Banjo-Tooie. Grunty gets out of Boulder, or at least her soul does, and inhabits this robot, and you basically gotta re-imprison her. It's standard platforming fare.
Yeah.
It's like, but yeah. On the other end of the scale, you have It's Mr. Pants.
Yeah. It's Mr. Pants is like a wonderful kind of game, but more like the people working on it, because, well, I don't know if I've already told you about it, but back in 2016, there was a contest from Rare called Play It First for Sea of Thieves, and I entered that contest with an animated cartoon, and I was one of the lucky ones that got into Rare and got invited to their headquarters. So yeah, it was awesome to meet some of the people working at Rare. There is a guy working that's been there like from the 90s, and he's like basically Mr. Pants. Every time someone takes a picture of him, he appears with the Mr. Pants face. He doesn't like to appear in any pictures, so instead of erasing him or not taking pictures, he only changes his face with Mr. Pants' face.
That is interesting.
Yeah.
And Mr. Pants is a weird thing because that was like Rare's actual mascot. It's just not a lot of people knew about Mr. Pants. Like, he was kind of an Easter egg sort of deal in their some of their games, if I'm remembering correctly. But he finally got his own game because, once again, It's Mr. Pants, the game, was supposed to be another game, like Donkey Kong Coconut Crackers. But once again, Nintendo and Rare split, and they needed to fill the gap. How they arrived at using Mr. Pants is not really known. It's like, instead of stuffing Banjo again, which, let's see, I think probably Rare's best game on the GBA was Saber Wolf.
Mm, yeah.
Like,
Yes.
I liked it well enough. It's just, unfortunately, not a lot of people bought the GBA games. Though, interestingly enough, like the highest selling Rare titles of the post Microsoft era until about Kinect Sports was the Donkey Kong Country trilogy. Once again, that's kind of a statement of how ill connecting the Rare Microsoft marriage was for a very long time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and building up to this, even though that all these GBA games were projects started for the buyout, they did go on to make a few Nintendo DS games. The aforementioned Diddy Kong Racing DS, but the game I fondly remember them for, Viva Pinata Pocket Paradise. The Viva Pinata franchise in general, I think, is one of the best things Rare's ever done, and it's really
Go figure. Games about colorful pinatas playing in colorful circumstances was not the easiest sell in the days of gaming where cool was mostly brown.
Well, once again, that I chalk that up to being mostly up to Microsoft and Rare. Well, Microsoft being really, really bad at marketing family-friendly material until the Kinect. Like, I mean, Viva Pinata was not the first. Hey, let's appeal to kids kind of thing that they had going on there. It's just. I'll say Viva Pinata succeeded a bit more than, say, Voodoo Vince, or any other of the failed mascot platformers that they were developing for the original Xbox. In the sense that Viva Pinata got more than one game, but I genuinely do think that if Viva Pinata had come out under the aegis of Nintendo, that would have been a mega franchise during the Wii era.
Probably, yeah.
It's like, I mean, that's, this is right up Nintendo's alley here. And for those who have never played Viva Pinata, it's basically a creature garden simulation type deal. That's also kind of an unusual genre for consoles and handhelds. And what they did for the DS was a game called Viva Pinata Pocket Paradise, which was basically a DS version of the first Viva Pinata game. And yeah, I actually sunk a lot of hours into Pocket Paradise because that's the kind of game that worked really well on a DS, with the whole touchscreen deal. I'd probably say, on balance, it fared better than the PC version, actually. If only because the PC version was still attuned to the Xbox 360 controller. But once again, the Pocket Paradise game here didn't really do much business. Once again, published by THQ. Seeing a pattern here. And I suppose one of the most interesting things here is that was it for Rare on Nintendo platforms. Like, Rare just stopped making games for Nintendo systems. They never graduated to the 3DS, and even today, that they're not doing anything for. They're not currently doing anything for the Nintendo Switch. I mean, the whole Rare Replay thing. Rare Replay is kind of a hard sell because not all of the games are in disc. It's part emulation, part, hey, it's some of the games on Xbox Live Arcade that we did for the Xbox 360. Bit of a jumbled mess, let's say. Believe me, I would like to see Rare Replay on the Nintendo Switch, but Rare, and that might happen ironically with a another developer, but it's like Rare seems a bit too busy with Sea of Thieves to like delve back into developing for Nintendo handhelds, or I know the Switch is technically a hybrid console thing, but it's still a handheld.
It has some of the limitations handhelds have.
Yes.
Especially regarding, like, storage space and stuff.
And indeed, the DS Age is, Microsoft licensed, like, probably the most things to appear. Not only did you have the Rare stuff, but, Age of Empires showed up. Zoo Tycoon showed up in multiple entries. Like, Mech Assault showed up. Yeah, there was a Mech Assault game on the DS. I know nothing about it except that it exists. But after this, Microsoft stopped allowing games on really any platform. And I couldn't really tell you why. Maybe it was a sales thing. Maybe they thought the 3DS was too much of an encroachment. It's just, for a while, Microsoft stopped allowing their properties on, the Nintendo systems. And then Minecraft happened. I can say with, maybe not authority, but with a certain amount of certainty, that Minecraft changed the game here. No pun intended. Because Minecraft, when Microsoft bought it, that was a game that was already on, so many platforms. And if you recall, one of the big questions around Minecraft was, is Microsoft going to restrict this to the Xbox or Windows Store, under the Xbox banner from now on? And, the answer turned out to be no. Microsoft continued to proliferate Minecraft beyond, not just existing platforms, but, platforms that came into existence after or, like during the buyout. Like, for example, Microsoft, they were the ones who pushed for the Wii U version of Minecraft. As I understand it, Notch didn't want Minecraft on the Wii U. But since, it was no longer a factor, Minecraft kept appearing on more platforms. Because, this is kind of what happens when you pay $2 billion for a franchise. And it's already on, pretty much everything that was... available to be on at that point. You're going to continue to want to make more money by having that thing available. And that's continued onward with the Minecraft brand. In fact, even though Microsoft has said that, even though with Ori and the Blind Forest coming, and to address Cuphead and New Super Lucky's Tale, Cuphead was done in association with Microsoft. That means the Xbox Live integration with the Nintendo Switch. That's about as far as that goes, because Studio Murder actually owns the IP to Cuphead, and they publish the game themselves. I suppose the other thing with Cuphead is Microsoft does have like exclusivity on that. So they would be the ones to have to greenlight that to appear on another platform, and they were fine with the Nintendo Switch. As far as New Super Lucky's Tale, a bit blurrier on that, because I don't think Microsoft has announced any sort of Xbox Live integration with that yet. Also, New Super Lucky's Tale is actually a, new version of the Super Lucky's Tale game. So those are kind of borderline cases. But we do have another Microsoft game coming in Minecraft Dungeons. Once again, anything Minecraft does seem...
And that's literally just
It's
Minecraft Mystery Dungeon?
Well, no, it's Minecraft Diablo. It's
right, mystery. Yeah.
Not Mystery Dungeon, it's Diablo Dungeon. So,
in fairness, I'm a dungeon crawler noob enough that I might not always be able to tell the difference.
Right. And so that gets to the big question. Okay, Microsoft is like officially on the Nintendo Switch, and not just for Minecraft. Will this translate into bigger things? Like, there have been rumors suggesting that the Halo Master Chief Collection is going to appear on the Nintendo Switch. I think the likes of Ori and the Blind Forest and Minecraft is about as far as it goes. Like Microsoft is definitely fine with having, Minecraft being on the platform, or some of their smaller stuff like Ori and the Blind Forest, or other indie games that they have a hand in. But as far as the big franchises, don't see it. I mean, because also keep in mind, it's not just a matter of Microsoft wanting to say Halo on the Switch. I'll tell you why the Master Chief Collection isn't coming. It's because it's the Master Chief Collection. It's a big, it's about as big budget AAA as you can get. Like, as it's being understood, like the Master Chief Collection is having problems running on the original Xbox One.
It's an HD re-release of all 3 Halo games for
HD remakes. Like, right. If we were talking about like the original versions of these Halo games, I'd say, technologically, sure, it's feasible. I mean, not necessarily not easy peasy, because last-gen games on the Nintendo Switch actually do not have the best history, as anyone who actually bought the Nintendo Switch version of Saints Row the Third can attest to.
Though the Halo 1 is more than one generation ago, but yeah.
Right. My point is, if there was a problem there, it's not going to be a matter of power, it's a matter of technology and how systems are built. Yeah. But, it's like that, the Forza and the Halos and, the Gears of, Gears 5 is not going to show up on the Nintendo Switch. I mean, just on a technological level. It's not like, it's either infeasible or the game is going to have to be so reconstituted. It's going to be, yeah, you did it, but maybe you shouldn't have.
But how much did it cost?
Yeah, I mean, we're kind of facing that with some other stuff here, like The Witcher 3. I mean, yeah, you got The Witcher 3 running on the Nintendo Switch. It looks like total ass, but you did it. Like, I suppose we'll have to see how compromised things are when that thing releases. But, this is the level of sacrifice we're talking about here. It's like, I hope you like your games extra blurry. Because, that's what you're going to get with games at that level. As far as Ori and the Blind Forest goes, that was doable. Not as doable as you might think, because the Ori and the
I believe that's a pretty high frame rate and
yes,
pretty good visuals, even though they're technically 2D-ish.
Well, it's like, keep in mind, this is Ori and the Blind Forest, the definitive edition.
Mm-hmm.
They had to make the definitive edition because the original version had some severe optimization issues.
Mm-hmm.
That was like, there was some extra stuff, sure, but it was mainly because, and I can attest to this, because I put about 40 hours into the original version. Really didn't play the definitive version, because that's kind of what happens when you put 40 hours into a game. You're just kind of done with it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, but yeah, as I've read up a bit on Ori and the Blind Forest on the Switch, and yeah, it was a bit of a task to get it running on the Switch. Might be even more of a task to get Ori and the Will of the Wisps on the platform. So yeah, this is kind of where things lie in the whole Microsoft Nintendo continuum, as it were. They're literally closer than ever, but since they're still there's only so much you're going to get out of that.
Mm-hmm.
It's basically if anything appears on the Nintendo Switch from Microsoft or in some way greenlit by Microsoft, Microsoft thinks that they can get something out of it in terms of like sales or Xbox Live integration. That's a big one there. And as far as the inverse, no, do not expect Nintendo to be making games on Microsoft platforms anytime soon.
Especially not with any of their like first party,
yeah,
big IPs.
I mean, Microsoft is the one who made these decisions. Microsoft and Nintendo do have a working relationship here. But Nintendo has no interest in having their games on any other platform other than Nintendo platform. And yes, I know they have mobile games, but here's the thing. They literally had to be dragging, kicking, and screaming to the mobile game sector by their investors.
Yep.
Yeah. Their investors basically said, do mobile games, you're leaving money on the table. And even to this day, Nintendo does mobile games, but they're really not interested in the mobile game money. They're interested in the getting people from the mobile game side of things to Nintendo platform side of things. Mm-hmm. They see them as basically giant advertisements.
Yep.
I'm like,
we'll see how Mario Kart Go or whatever it is.
Mario Kart on Tour, if I'm remembering correctly.
Mario Kart Tour, yeah, how that works when that comes out. But again, it'll probably be like, and if you like this, we also have like full games.
I mean, keep in mind, Nintendo has found tremendous success in the mobile arena with Fire Emblem Heroes and such.
Mm-hmm.
It's just more like Super Mario Run didn't really work because Nintendo wasn't conforming to the mobile models. Anyway, yeah. So, and finally, another big part of the whole Microsoft Nintendo quasi-alliance, as it were, is the whole cross-platform play deal.
Which can be tricky depending on how different games connect to different networks.
Yeah. Right. And so Microsoft feels like it's in their interest to work with Nintendo on this kind of thing. See like Minecraft and the Better Together updates, or Rocket League having cross-platform play, that kind of thing. They want to make sure that thing goes off smoothly, and also to stick it to Sony, because Sony isn't allowing Xbox Live onto their platform. That's got its that has its issues, but we've talked about the cross-play controversy before. Anyway, so yeah, that'll about do it for this installment of Fragments of Silicon. Coming up on the week ahead. Hang on. My notes are not in the proper place. I don't know why. Let's see. Here we go. Coming up on Friday morning, August 30th, we'll be having Dylan Nigel of Gamius. We've covered a couple of games this year in our review sessions. The likes of Lines and IO, if anyone remembers those. Oddly enough, what we're going to be talking about with Dylan here is going to be a game called Lake, which is very, very far away from these other games, because Lines and IO were pretty simple mobile-born puzzle games. Lake is a narrative adventure game. We'll also be showcasing some footage from the prototype version.
Assuming it works properly and everything.
And that's your department.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, so coming up on the Sunday reviews, we'll be reviewing The Church in the Darkness. This is a third-person stealth action game that that's relying on procedural generation for some stuff, story stuff as well. It's interesting, and I'll have more on that on Sunday. We got Sagebrush for the Nintendo Switch. Gallix,
Mm-hmm.
what is Sagebrush?
It is so far it is a first-person adventure style game. Visually, I mean, it's not quite as good, but I don't know. I've only gotten so far as it looks like you're breaking into a camp of some sort. I really don't have a whole lot of details yet.
Fair enough. And Zeus Begins. This is a brawler that's taking place in ancient Greece, and you are playing as Zeus. And yeah, this is basically a very unique take on the Zeus conquering Kronos mythos. Like, to say the least. More on this on Sunday.
Less rock vomit, more Street Fighter.
More Final Fight, Double Dragon. That kind of deal. Anyway, so until Friday, I shall wish you good gaming.